guys, I'm here today with my wrap-up for the MG May Reads Read-a-thon. This wrap-up is a little late, but I'm sure you've come to expect that from me by now. This read-a-thon actually ran from the 20th to the 27th of May, and it was hosted by the lovely Akoss, whose channel I will link down below. And without further ado, let's get into what I read during the read-a-thon. So I managed to finish 3 books during the read-a-thon, which I was pretty pleased with. I think I had about 7 on my TBR, and I said in my TBR video that I would be pleased if I completed 3 or 4 of those, which I did, so I'm pretty happy with that. And for the most part, I really enjoyed what I read. Started off the read-a-thon pretty strong on the Friday that it started. I had the whole day pretty much free, and so I just read the whole day, and I was able to start and finish one whole book, and that is Ollie's Odyssey by William Joyce. I love William Joyce. He's one of my favorite children's authors. I've read some of his picture books, which I've really enjoyed, especially the Fantastic Flying Books of Mr. Morris Lesmore, which you've heard me talk about on this channel before, no doubt. This was actually only, I believe, the second chapter book of his that I've read. I've read the first book in the Guardians of Childhood series, Nicholas St. North and the Battle of the Nightmare King. I read that one and really enjoyed it, but this is only the second chapter book of his that I have read, and I really enjoyed this. I think I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. William Joyce's writing is just beautiful. He has a way of capturing childhood beautifully in his books, and this was no exception to that. This story is about a little boy named Billy who, soon after he is born, his mother makes for him a little bear rabbit kind of hybrid toy that they decide to name Ollie, and this toy becomes Billy's favorite toy. He takes him everywhere. Ollie and Billy are basically best friends. They do everything together. In this story, becoming a favorite toy is kind of a big thing in the toy kingdom. It's a special honor, and there's a villain in this story named Zozo the Clown who is intent on kidnapping favorite toys and taking them away from their owners. And so that's what happens to Ollie in this book, and then the story follows Ollie and Billy's journeys as they try to make it back to each other and reunite. This story was really fantastic and heartwarming. It had a beautifully nostalgic, kind of bittersweet tone throughout it. The story, as you can probably tell from the synopsis, is very Toy Story-esque, as Ollie is aware of everything that is happening to him. He does have a consciousness. He can move around on his own and things like that. Although this is a very sweet and nostalgic story for the most, there are definitely some dark elements to the story as well. Zozo the Clown and his minions, called the Creeps, are definitely very creepy and very scary, and you can tell that from the drawings, as well as the writing definitely takes a foreboding kind of tone during those times when they are discussed, which I thought added some great atmosphere and another layer of depth to the story. William Joyce definitely did a good job, too, of employing sort of kid language, quote-unquote, throughout this. Ollie and Billy kind of have their own language for things. The story starts when Billy is just a baby and follows him up till he's about 6 or 7, I think, so as he's exploring the world and kind of learning what things are, and Ollie is doing the same alongside of him, they kind of create their own words and their own language for things that they don't have the real words for yet. There are some absolutely beautiful, heartbreaking, heartwarming scenes in this. There's one towards the end of the story with this broken down merry-go-round, and I don't want to give too much away about it, but it was just absolutely beautiful the way it was described. William Joyce's writing is just magical in that way, and he definitely does a fantastic job of just bringing the nuances and the simplicity, but also the complexity at the same time of childhood to light. And I just really enjoyed this book, and I would definitely recommend it if you think it sounds like something you'd be interested in. The next thing I read for the read-a-thon was Withering by Sea by Judith Rossell. This is about our protagonist Stella, who lives in it's set in the Victorian era, and she lives in a huge high-end hotel called the Hotel Majestic with her 3 elderly, kind of bad-tempered aunts. And the hotel is perched on a cliff looking over the village of Withering by Sea. At the very beginning of the story, Stella sees a man who lives in the hotel hide something in a plant in the conservatory, and pretty soon she learns that there is a conspiracy from another man in the hotel and his henchmen trying to get their hands on this mysterious item, and Stella, of course, becomes embroiled in the middle of it and ends up taking possession of the item and then having to keep it from these bad men who are trying to get it and use it for evil purposes. And so it follows Stella on her journey as she tries to keep this item safe and meets a host of very interesting characters along the way, including a very precocious girl named Gert, a mysterious boy named Ben, and a man and his group of musical singing cats, to name just a few. Overall, I really enjoyed this story. I really liked Stella. She was a very headstrong character. She was not afraid to defy her aunts and face the consequences in order to do what was right and to protect this object that she has been entrusted with. I really love the side characters as well. I thought they were really well fleshed out and really well written, and definitely very interesting characters that added a lot of depth and interest to the story. I also thought the setting was really well done. The time period of the Victorian era was really brought through. There was a lot of intricate detail included about the decor of the era and what they ate, the clothing, etc., which I just thought made a really nice touch and really helped make the atmosphere of the story shine through. There were a couple of problems I had with the story, however. It's a very dramatic story. A lot of things are happening to Stella one after the other, which is understandable with the predicament she has gotten herself into. However, a lot of the drama was conveyed through things like her heart was hammering, she let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding, which is really kind of cliche and annoying, especially when it's used repetitively, which it kind of was in this book. It was just a little thing that kind of irked me. It didn't draw away from the story too much, but it was a detail that I didn't think was needed, and it was kind of irksome after a while. And then another thing that didn't necessarily bother me, but I just thought that I should mention, this definitely leaves questions unanswered. It's definitely open-ended. There's obviously, I'm thinking, going to be a sequel to this, so if that is the case, which I'm sure it is, I will probably pick up this second book because I enjoyed it enough to do so. I think my favorite thing about this story was actually that there were some elements of kind of mythology and mythical creatures and kind of folklore woven throughout it, which I wasn't expecting and which I really enjoyed and I thought were utilized very well to tell the story and to add a richness to it. So I feel like those elements will probably be explored much more in the sequel that I am hoping and assuming is coming. Overall, I really enjoyed this book. I think I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. Maybe I would say more like 3.5. It was a very enjoyable, solid read, and I would definitely recommend it if it sounds like something you'd be interested in. The last thing that I read during the read-a-thon I unfortunately didn't enjoy as much as the first two, and that is The Girl in the Tower by Lisa Schroeder with illustrations by Nicoletta Secoli. This is obviously a very gorgeous book, and the illustrations in black and white throughout are also gorgeous, as you can see. So I was really enjoying this at the beginning. It's written very simply, but it kind of works for the story, I think. It's kind of a simple, kind of modern fairy tale story, so I thought that the simple language really worked for it. The style was very simple yet elegant, so I thought that worked really well for the type of story that this was. This follows the story of Violet and her mother, who have been locked away in a tower by an evil queen ever since Violet was born, because the queen is very ugly and she desires more than anything to be beautiful, and she needs a strand of Violet's hair and along with a couple of other ingredients to make a spell that will make that happen. But she has to wait until Violet turns 11. So once Violet is born and the queen sees that she fits the requirements of the girl that she needs to complete the spell, she decides to kidnap her and her mother and lock them away in the tower of her castle until Violet is of the age that the spell requires. And so at the beginning it focuses more on the relationship between Violet and her mother and the dependence that they formed between the two of them, being locked away, just the two of them in this tower for all these years, and the ways in which her mother has tried to make her life as beautiful and enjoyable as it can be under their predicament. That part of the book was really great. I really enjoyed the way that the author described simple moments that Violet and her mother shared, playing make-believe, Violet drawing pictures for her mother, and them dreaming about what they want their lives to be when they eventually, hopefully, escape from the tower one day. So those moments were really beautiful, really well written, and touching. However, something changes towards the middle of the book, and under certain circumstances, Violet and her mother are separated, and from that point on, I didn't enjoy the story as much. Overall, the story really plays it safe. It's very predictable. It's not very nuanced, especially the ending. Like, nothing gets in the way of their plans to reunite with one another, and it just all happens way too easily, and there's no like wrenches thrown in the plans to make it more interesting. It just all unfolds very predictably and like way too simply, and it's completely unrealistic, and there's like no, and I understand it's a fairy tale, but it was just kind of annoying the way that everything came so simply, and they were just able to live happily ever after without any other real problems. So basically this started out pretty strong, and then as it went on, it went kind of downhill for me, unfortunately. And for that reason, I think I gave it 2 stars, maybe 2.5 stars. So I would say if you're interested in this, if it sounds good to you, maybe pick it up. But if not, I might say give this one a skip. Okay, so those were the 3 books that I was able to complete during the MG May Reads Readathon. I had a great time with this readathon, just as I did last year. Thank you so much to Akoss again for hosting it, and I believe she'll be hosting another one in July, so I am definitely looking forward to hopefully being able to participate in that one. Again, I will leave a link to Akoss's channel down in the description, as well as a link to the Goodreads group so that you can find out all the details about the next readathon that will be coming up, and hopefully participate if you would like to and are able. Thank you for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.